Brilliant. So to add a little more context about how this came about, back in April of this year, Hector was asked to do this 5-week project. So it was super rapid research where we got asked, how can we build, can we prototype a tool to help people working in the social sector use more with their sort of geographic data they have. So it's a 5-week project where we're researching the problem, defining it, designing a tool, developing it, and testing it. So it's super rapid prototyping. And that actually sort of lent into my background in that we used to build tools for specific responses at the Red Cross. And so we got used to building these sort of rapid tools and standing them up. So as part of that research, we spoke with a range of charities, some starting on their journey and some much further along with great sort of GIS mapping capability within there. And we thought the real area where we could have the most impact given the time was within those starting their mapping journey. Very much the experience I had when I was first asked, where are the people we're helping, how do they relate to indices of multiple deprivation? So early on in this research, we were speaking to experts. I just wanted to share this picture, which is in the blog post linked to earlier. And this was just some very initial landscape mapping of the tools being used and sort of the skill level we saw them being used by. So those who are starting their journey, there are organizations help, of course, superhighways, people using Google My Maps and Batch.geo, and we saw some of these coming up on the Menti word cloud as well. For the more confident beginners, they're moving on to using Open Audience, Local Insight, and starting to use some of the visualization tools around Flourish, Tableau, Power BI. At the more advanced level, we get into the full-on GIS tools, QGIS being one mentioned quite a lot because it's open source and free to use, but it's really sort of more advanced spatial capabilities in there. And at the very far end, we have people use tools that you basically program with and databases that run. So this is just sort of a snippet of what out there. I feel like we barely scraped the surface, and I saw actually in the word cloud names coming up that even, I didn't know the name of. So this is definitely not a comprehensive list, but hopefully a good one to get started. And I recommend reading the blogs to find out more about this. So focusing on people that starting their journey, we have 3 concepts that came up, and 2 of them sort of now been turned into tools. The first one at the time was called Open Connect, and it was really about lots of charities have postcodes relating to who they're helping or people using their service, but they really wanted to gain more insights into where those people were coming from, on details about them. And this was really what at the time Open Connect or Community Lens was about. And this was about connecting your internal data to external data sets, secondary data, to gain further insights. The second tool, which is the one we've worked on recently and launching today, was the AutoGeoMapper. And this was about being able to, again, posting data that could be your postcodes, or it could be data you have about war data, and automatically generating data, generating maps which visualize the distribution of where they are. And the third one hasn't been made yet, which was around just an initial mapping guide. So for people starting on their journey, there's a plethora of resources out there. There's so much out there, but this would be consolidating into one place, sort of linking out to all these resources. So those were the 3 initial concepts we came up with, and we asked people sort of to feedback on which one they want to see most. In that initial research, Community Lens came out as the most popular, but as you know, we went back and revisited the second tool as well. So I'm going to walk through the use case that Kate talked about, which was really about a small South London charity who collects postcodes from their service users and wants to have more insights around it. They really need to report to funders, like, are they helping the right people? Where are their people coming from? So we have a list of postcodes here. Again, this being sort of the unit of data that lots of the social sector work with. They collect addresses of those we're working with. Computer goes slightly slow on the screen sharing. Let me just scroll down and grab the whole lot. So this is a long list. It's how many there? 363 postcodes. So this is the main unit of data that Community Lens uses. So you click through to the analysis page, And here you drop in these postcodes and you then click map. So it just needs to be a single column you paste in. These are then automatically processed. And what it's doing in the background is sort of working out where those postcodes are located. So we can see some errors in this data set, very common ones you'll see, which is you get the truncated version of the postcode. So it's not the full address. So this tool works on needing the full list. So you can even now go back and look at the errors and remove the ones that aren't working, and you sort of control find to find these, or you can progress. So I can sort of redo those again, maps them again, and we can see that the, I think it was the SE9 or SW9 I had is now removed. If you do want to progress without them, you can just say continue without these ones in there. On the second page, you get to choose what data set you're connecting your postcodes to. In this initial prototype, it was only, as we say, a rapidly built tool. We really focused on the indices of multiple deprivation. It was a use case we were hearing repeatedly, and I do like the fact that it sort of circled back to my original experience. I wish this tool existed when I started. So we're going to be looking here at the high-level indices multiple deprivation, but you can link it to the sub-indices around income, employment, living environment, and barriers to housing. So you choose which one to look at, and now it automatically places the pins on the map located where your postcodes are. In the background, it is now mapped the indices of multiple deprivation. What we're looking at here is this deprivation measure. It sort of looks at many factors, those subheadings we saw around housing, employment, and income, and builds an aggregated measure to try and work out which areas have high deprivation. We can now see our sort of pins laid over that. So where the darker colors are is where the deprivation level areas are higher. As you can probably expect for those that know London, we can see Dulwich Village is a lighter color, as you would expect. So what this tool does, it doesn't just layer the two maps together, it also does some basic analysis for you. So it gives a little text summary of what it's seeing from the data. So 87% of the locations are in the bottom 50% of areas in England for the indices of multiple deprivation. And there's a little nuance here in that we're speaking about the areas the people are located rather than the actual people themselves. So this doesn't get exact insights to the people, but rather the areas they live in. It also then shows you the distribution by decile, by 10% of where these locations are. So we can see out of our 363, I think it was, locations, 107 of those are in the bottom 20% area. So we can see those areas are quite deprived. We get given the average rank here. So you can click on any particular tag. It's pretty much like Google Maps at this point. So you can zoom in, you can click on, too far, a bit of lag on here. Zooming out again, you can click on a particular tag and it gives you a bit more information breakdown about the different sub-indices. So we can see on certain like education decile, it's actually got, it's in the sort of decile number 9, and that's a really good score. So we know people in that area have good access to education. You can jump between the measures. So you can look at income. If I zoom out to get the full review for different areas, you can look at employment. So now you can quickly tab through the different sub indicators. So for our use case, we were really interested in where the user's located, because we want to show a funder that the service users are really, we're reaching the really ones that are in deprived areas, the ones that need the service the most. And now we can tell the funder that 87% of those are in the bottom 50%. And actually nearly 1/3 are located in the bottom 20% of areas for deprivation. And we can explore further. So we can look at different indices. Let me just move the tab. So we could say, we know for education, we're scoring a lot higher. And I think actually in living environment, just being an urban area, we can see that actually the areas we're looking at, the living environment is ranking very poor. So now you can quickly get insights just from that list of postcodes. You can start to get insights about your service users. You can then download the data. So the data that we processed in the background, we can now download and you can use for other mapping purposes. So we've now added to the postcode the longitude and latitude. So if you're a bit more of an advanced mapper, you can then use this to map into other tools. And you can also see the summary by the different measures. So now we have a good overview of where our service users are coming from. And now we're going to show the second tool, which is the AutoGeoMapper. And the sort of use case we're speaking around here is there might be a funding opportunity that the charity has seen, and they really want to know, want to show where they're helping service users at the moment, to show they're working in the area, can show they are working in specific wards where the funding is going towards, and show, really present to the bid that there's evidence that they've got a presence there. So it works very much the same as Community Lens. We again can use our unit of postcodes, map them again, and it of course will bring up the errors. We can choose to progress without those or clean those up. So what we're seeing here now, it'll take a moment to load, is we now have a map of at ward level of where those service users are located. So we can zoom in a bit, more and more names will start to appear, and we can see sort of the darker areas are where the most service users are located, the lighter ones where the fewest. So in this use case, we can see we've got a good presence in Camberwell, in Cold Harbour, and also just off the map in Rotherhithe. So this can really be used to build the case for funding applications on where we're working. We also get the data table. So now we have the count per particular ward. So we can see in North Walworth, there were 25 postcodes located. At any time, we can also switch to look at the local authority view. So here we can see our distribution across Lambeth, Southwark and Lewisham. And this might be a case here, you suddenly realize you have more service users in Lewisham and you realize, and you can really make the case that you do have the reach there, and you can apply for more funding to help people in those areas, and that you're sort of not just working on Lambeth and sort of the edge of Southwark. So hopefully you get insights into where you're working. It is then possible to download an image of this map. So now we have an image that can be brought straight into a report to evidence where you're working. And as before, you can download the data in a slightly different form. So rather than it being per postcode, we now have our data. In this case, I was looking at the local authority map. So we have the count per local authority. If we go back to the ward data and download that, you get the count per ward. So this can be, again, used in other tools. It can be included as a data table in your report, if that's useful as well. So it takes this granular data of postcodes and aggregates it up into a form for reporting and visualization. So we're given the use case around London here, but of course, these tools have a wider scope, and we want to make sure we're not completely London-centric. So if I just refresh that again, I generated in this case, or if I close these spreadsheets, getting back to the original data, I generated, these are some random postcodes for the Birmingham area, just to show this, so we can put this in. So there is a caveat on Community Lens that at the moment it only works for England, and that was just generally because it was such a rapidly built tool. The infrastructure for the backend only existed for England at the moment, but it is possible if there are requests for this to extend this in the future. So processing the postcodes for Birmingham, let's say we're interested in health deprivation, we click through, and here, as they're random postcodes, as you expect, it's a bit more distributed. So generally in the bottom half for most deprived, again, we can look at, say, living environments, and the different scales, and click on a particular measure for that postcode, we can see where it ranks in the IMD and their particular score per decile. Jumping back to AutoGeoMapper, again, to show another use case that isn't so London-based. I've generated a data set around local authorities. So when you start, we in the examples, we have postcode data sort of as our entry point, but you can access AutoGeoMapper with tabular data. Say you have your data pre-aggregated at ward, you already know the numbers, or at local authority, you can download some templates here. So you can download, say, a template for ward level at a local authority, or you can download a UK-wide template, which is for local authorities. In our case, let's close that one. I've generated some data here, again, random values, but this is for the whole of the UK and local authority values. Of course, you might not want to do the whole of the UK. You could just be focusing on, say, the Southwest or Wales. And so you don't have to have the full data set. You just need to have the data you need, and it will pick it up appropriately. So again, there's about 300 or so, 382 local authorities, and I've generated random data for that. You can then click to table data. So you start on postcode, click through to table data, drop that data in, just cut and paste from Excel, map the table data. So the initial map here will be showing ward. Of course, there's no information at ward data. We're going to move over to local authority, and here we can see the local authority map generated for you automatically. If I zoom out slightly, we can see it covers the whole of the UK. So we've got Scotland and Wales there, and I sort of highlighted a particular area in the northeast with higher values, and this could be then used to show this is where the most service users are, this is where our reach is, or whatever value you can associate. It could be even deprivation level aggregated up if you hold that. If you enter table data at the ward level, it will actually aggregate up to local authorities if you wanted. So you could say, looking at my local example, I live in Gypsy Hill, and say you have data about Gypsy Hill and Knights Hill next to us. If you click local authority, it will aggregate that data straight up to you to local authority level. And again, the maps are all ready to, scrolling on the wrong part, to download the image. It's going to be super zoomed out. Not the best placement, but you understand, and you can download the data. And any data you download from this tool can be re-put into the tool again through the table input, and you can customize the file name for tracking sort of what data is in there. So there's a quick overview of the two tools. These are sort of give understand these are being built very quickly, and we're really excited to have them out there. No community lens. I checked the data last night. It's had over 1,000 times it's been used, and it's processed, I think, nearly 90,000 postcodes now. So really excited to have this happening with AutoGeoMapper, and we'd love to hear your feedback. There's so much more we can add to these. These are very early on. So having that guidance of what we can build next and making that use case of, if it just did this, just did that, it would take it to the next level. So we're really excited to have this out there and in the open.
There's a link, Simon, isn't there, at the top right, I think, for you to make suggestion, feedback. Yeah,
so you can click feedback form at any time, choose the tool you want to give feedback about, and just leave your name and sort of what you're interested in having added, and filling that out is really useful. Also, if you find any bugs, we've always good for us to fix those as well. So do please let us know how you're using it, what you want to add to it, and any problems you're having.
Just going to clarify a couple of things, Simon. So data that's pasted into the tool isn't saved anywhere, is it?
No, so it's purely working in the browser. So for sort of privacy reasons, we decided not to implement it saving the data. So this works purely in your browser. No data is sent to a server and stored. So everything you share there sort of stays local.
And the other thing I was going to clarify and what I like particularly with the postcode pasting, Simon showed you some errors, and it was the truncated postcodes. I think there was one full postcode there. It doesn't matter what case and whether you have the space in the right. So it's quite forgiving in terms of format of postcode. I think the error that came up with one of the postcodes will just have been that postcode doesn't exist.
Yeah, so as we look at this list here, we can see like SE17 one SY is in lowercase. It doesn't matter about the spacing before, so some people will write their postcodes as a block. I think we got one here, SE17 as said. It will process all of those, and it even does a bit of data cleaning. Quite often you might find someone's hit space after a postcode, so it trims out all those extra spaces and processes it, makes its best guess based on the postcode of what it should be, and only rejects those that are just completely incompatible. I think in the use case, yeah, there was one postcode that didn't exist and the other ones were truncated.
I was just going to make one comment as well, though, about that, the data being in the browser, and kind of best practice around using these tools. And some of you will be really familiar with using these tools, but if you're not, just do always download that file and name and date it, because that's your kind of nice clean copy that's already been run through, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel when you re-import the data, because you want to create it again for whatever reason. So